Okay, we start the Winners at War finale with the Edge of Extinction challenge to return to the main game. I know there'll be comments galore about advantages, and there are many folks who are super opposed to the idea of someone in a challenge having an advantage over the others. They believe it takes away from the challenge itself. Inherently, it's unfair. That's why it's called an advantage. But if you have earned those advantages in the game somehow, and you all had access to them, it's hard to argue about the fairness. You may not like the result. You may not like the way in which the challenge then is less surprising because the person with lots of advantages has more opportunity and is more likely to win. Look at this challenge. I mean, Natalie with four, three or four advantages getting into the game. She was, pushed ahead and not having to do this piece and not having to do that piece and only a third less of the rope bridge. It's pretty spectacular. The kind of boost that Natalie had coming into this. But Natalie busted her hump on Edge of Extinction. And we can talk about that. We'll talk about it today. The Edge of Extinction is a really controversial idea. Do you like it? Do you not? Should it be part of the show? Should there be constraints with respect to landing on the Edge of Extinction? There are some natural ones. Natalie was voted out first. Boom, you're voted out of Survivor. That's typically the end. Done, over. But when you land on an Edge of Extinction, you have the opportunity to come back in. And the idea that someone voted out first, lives on the Edge of Extinction through the entire game, and comes back into the game, still receiving 4 votes from the jurors at the end, is impressive as hell. Is it appropriate? That's something we can talk about. Was she playing Survivor, or was she playing something different? The way in which she garnered advantages, the way in which she deployed those penalties and advantages that she got on other players who were in the game. These are interesting dynamics to the game, but there's this separation between those who are there and engaged and playing the full-on game of Survivor that we know and has evolved with twists, etc., versus a completely different thing, enduring the Edge of Extinction. So the natural consequence for me is, okay, you're on Edge of Extinction, you're outside the game, everybody knows that, you come back into the game, and you aren't perceived to be as deserving of a win by the jury, and that's all that matters, is who the jury believes should win, and so you don't get the win. That's not always the case. It has happened when somebody came back in and they got the win. But I don't know that that will happen again. There is something inherent in one's time being outside the game. Even if you aren't eating extra food, etc., you're still outside the game in a way that causes jurors, I think, to exclude you from the top prize. That's kind of the natural consequence. Should it be put into the rules? Should there be something separate for those who land on Edge of Extinction and what they're able to accomplish, separate from being able to win the actual game of Survivor that's going on? I don't know. It's hard to tell. Had Natalie, for example, taken Tony into a fire challenge at the end herself, had she gone up against him, bested him, ousted him, and then been sitting with Michelle and Sarah in the final 3, would Natalie be more deserving? My sense is that the jury would be more inclined to reward that kind of ballsiness coupled with all the effort she put in on the Edge of Extinction, and she was articulate about explaining all the work she did to get where she was, versus What they didn't see as strongly from Sarah, I don't think the jurors saw all of the efforts that Sarah made. I agree with Sarah that Tony needed her, that combination of their aligning, of their working together, the cops are us, helped Tony be where he is, helped him win, helped him get to the end. That was a team effort. But there was this, and is this outwardness, this ability that Tony has to exploit his abilities in the game and to communicate his choices differently from the way Sarah does that. Sarah is not as likely to be so boastful about moves she makes. I think it's because she isn't sure how she'll be perceived. And that kind of hesitation about being willing to sing your own praises can undermine one's success in this game. So I don't know. Had Natalie done what I think might have been a little more impressive in taking on Tony in the fire challenge herself to make sure he was out of the way, I think she might have had a really increased chance of having earned juror votes and the win of the $2 million. So I don't know. I'll talk with Natalie. I wonder if she regrets that choice or whether she's even considered it or whether she's just happy with the choice that she made. Clearly, if she were in a position to make a different choice, she would have made it. She thought it through, thought it was the most effective use of her power to not go up against Tony in making a fire. And we know the result. So it's just interesting to contemplate what ifs. Tough with Survivor because the what ifs, subtle as they may be, change everything. Everything. And it becomes kind of useless at some point to say, well, what if this? And then what if that? Because even if you do switch one of those points and start talking about, well, what if X happened? You don't know what the Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G might be that came after you made that what if switch. So everything can change on a dime in this game of Survivor, which makes that kind of flexibility and observation so necessary, and your confidence to act quickly, immediately, to make decisions in the moment, on the spot. Those are marks of a good winner. Expressing that confidence and expressing your reasoning and being proud of your choices is a big, big piece that needs to be brought to the end, whether you're male or female. So how many of you watching as Natalie had those advantages, as she was struggling in the challenges, advantages or not, and then pulls it out and she wins? How many of you lost it? Oh! There's, regardless of whether she deserved to win the overall, there's this pride, I think I have, or at least this kind of sense of accomplishment, this good feeling when someone really works as hard and consistently as she did to get back in. And when that's rewarded, I enjoy it. Argue as you will about Edge of Extinction being viable, period, but it's there. It was part of Win As At War, and she worked her ass off, really, really pushing. And she got back in. So I think earning 4 votes at the end was legitimate, good compensation for her efforts. I'm okay with her not having been selected the winner because, from my perspective, there is someone who could justify his efforts in a much more consistent way, even though they were different. He didn't have to work at the Edge of Extinction because he was never voted out. And I don't buy into the idea that there is credit due for never having received a vote. I know that sounds odd, but who cares? it doesn't really matter. All that matter, even if you got, one less than the person voted out, every single tribal council, who cares? You're still there. So it didn't matter whether you got no votes or some votes. And I think people make too much of that in rewarding players. So I don't reward Tony at all for not getting any votes. Good for him. It doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't impact the game. We don't have a scale of, some votes versus no votes versus all votes, other than you're out. And he wasn't out. He was in, and he worked the game beautifully. Not just beautifully, but in such an improved way over his original gameplay that I don't think anyone could ever take any of the kudos, the credit away from him. He's quite a player. He really proved himself. Oh my God, he was great to watch. I think Probst stole from him the opportunity to say he's the best of all time. You know why. So screw you, Probst. Look what you stole from Tony. Damn good player. But you don't get to call yourself the best of all time because you haven't played against the best. Love you, Tones. Okay, what were we talking about? Natalie won. Challenge over. Without taking away from each person's life story and the honest ways in which Survivor has impacted them. It just doesn't sit right with me in the midst of the show to have these stilted kind of they're not scripted, but they're outside the game kind of moments. I get it. It's Winners at War. They had all played and won, and this was Jeff Probst's effort to engage them in ways that would cause the audience to be a little more emotionally connected. Blah, blah. Okay, and I was, some of the things that some of the players said after the first Edge of Extinction challenge, getting back in before they left the game, were interesting. They were warm. They were touching to hear and to learn about them. But I don't know that they fit in right there. That commentary is better served in a reunion. It's better served in a format where you're talking about real lives and the impact of the game over time and on your family, etc. When we're in the midst of a game, and never mind a finale of Survivor, I don't like the ways in which it feels manipulative of the producers to edit how we're feeling. Screw that. I want to see Survivor. I want to see it played. I want to ride that wave. I want to enjoy the intensity of the game. And I think these kinds of distractions take away from that momentum. That's just me. It happens a lot, and it's happening more with Probst making efforts to make the show something it isn't. And I'm off-put by it. I don't like it. I don't think it's skillful. I think he misses the mark. Not that I have an opinion. And in the midst of Probst talking to these contestants about their lives, he inserts himself in a way that is false, first of all, and then, the phoniness is palpable to me. It again, that word gross. So he says, and we are all just one big family. Well, we're not, and you aren't a participant anyway. And he's so separate, you as viewers just could not understand. He's skillful as a host, and he's certainly iconic within the context of what is the show, Survivor. But he's not part of this group of participants. He's not supportive of us. He's not involved with us. He's detached from and pretending to be something he isn't. And it is just grotesque when I watch him on air pretend that he's something he isn't, including himself in this idea of being part of a survivor family. Ugh. He truly, truly isn't. And I think there would be few survivor participants who disagree with me there. Many won't talk about it because of their interest in being included, even when that is unlikely and certainly on the whim of Probst at times. So after the first challenge is over, there's a scene in which Tony and Sarah are talking. And they're talking about Natalie. And I'm desperate to try and figure out what's in Sarah's mind. Is Sarah aware that she needs to get rid of Tony? There are these slight insights into her feelings about him as a partner. And there are occasions when I think, oh, she is considering it. But I don't think that they're shared boldly enough. I don't think they're contemplated realistically enough. I think the timing is just delayed sufficiently that Tony will best her. And I thought this all along based on what I'd seen in the edit. But I hear from Sarah that she really felt as if she contributed equally, could argue to the jury why she was deserving, and was prepared to do what she needed to do when the time came. But I didn't see that in gameplay. I didn't sense that she really was prepared to oust him. I think there were many an opportunity when Sarah could have changed the game and taken control, and doing so would have required her to betray him. That's part of the game. This idea that two people never betray one another leaves too much to chance and leaves it outside one's control as to whether or not they earned and deserved the win. I get it. I understand the connection you might have to the genuineness of Sarah, to the kindness, to that beautiful relationship quality where there is love and connection and support. But that can be what undermines your game. And I feel so strongly that you can love yourself and be supported by people who understand Survivor and what's necessary, and be celebrated for knowing when to cut that beautiful friend of yours' throat. It's just a beautiful part of the game. And you can hug afterwards and go on. Ben talked about this was about friendship. Oh my gosh, it is not. It is anything but friendship. Yes, there are real connections. Yes, you do have these emotional moments where you are sharing things that others will never share, and you are somehow bonded as a result of that. But you're still in the game if you've got your wits about you, and you need to focus on what it is you're there to do and how you would support your family as a result of it. And the goal being, I want that money. I want that prize. I want to win. I'm in a competition. I'm an elite player in the game. I've won it before. Play, play, play. There's nothing to kind of supplant that. You can't switch to, I just want to be friends with everybody and be respected as a player in the game of Survivor. I understand and I appreciate those of you who are warmed by the genuineness of his emotional struggles and how Ben wanted to be a warm, kind person and wanted to not have regrets and think about himself in a particular way. I get it. More power to him if that's what he needs. This, the game of Survivor, is not a place to work that out. Therapy? Yes. Survivor? No. Work it out before you get there. Or the game will swallow you up. And And that is what I feel happened to a few of the players in this season. Ben in particular, I feel he was swallowed up by his emotional reaction and emotional needs, his desire to be felt positively about, to be warmed. And unfortunately, even in his efforts to be friendly, etc., throughout the game, he made really inappropriate, harsh, distancing moves that he was thinking were helpful, but they weren't in the game or in his efforts to be friends with people. But none of that matters, because when the game ends, like a football game, you take off your helmet, you take off your survivor garb, and you move on in life, sharing bonds with those who were part of this experience, developing friendships that are lasting and meaningful. That all happens with people interested in it happening post the reveal of the winner. But until that point, when that winner's being revealed, please play. I want to watch you play. I want to watch you use your mind to move through the game in as effective a way benefiting you as possible. And I want to watch you encounter others doing that. And I want, when it's over, I want to see you hug them and appreciate their gameplay. And I want to see you hugged by them when they appreciate that you took them out, that you killed them, that you destroyed when necessary. Come with me here. We need a legitimate survivor to continue. We need good players to be supported. We don't want the whitewashed version of some mush-mashy facade that's just crap. Even as heartwarming as it can be when people go, "Oh, I love you." So Sarah does make a really good point about how her perspective of herself and her gameplay isn't as important as the jurors' perspective of her gameplay. I think that's a really self-aware point, and it's good that she understands that. However, I think what she misses is this idea that she felt she was going to be able to share with the jury why she deserved to win, rather than getting rid of Tony, which kind of shows it, proves it. So Tony, who is showy and confident about explaining his bold choices, needed to be out of the way, and she needed to be the person to have removed him in order to get credit for bringing him that far or being in partnership with him that long, and then taking control. I don't think, even if Sarah had made fire and gotten rid of Tony, that her efforts to explain to the jurors why she was equal in stature to Tony and her gameplay was as strong would have been effective. I think she, Sarah, needed to have removed Tony prior to some arbitrary fire meeting. Even if she'd won the fire, I don't think she would have had a strong enough case to impact jurors to give her the win. That's my take on the season and her role. But it will be interesting to hear more about her perspective and what things we may not have seen in the edit that the jurors may have been aware of with respect to her powerful gameplay. Okay, these challenges I've talked about not being the end-all in the game of Survivor still are sometimes intriguing. Isn't it fascinating how the person so far behind, here we are in another challenge I'm talking about, we've moved into that 3-tiered puzzle challenge for immunity. And this is a challenge that Michelle had won in a previous season. Here she is way behind in the challenge and yet comes to that 3-tiered puzzle just rocking through it. Boom, 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 and takes the win. Fascinates me how that happens, how people come from so far behind and figure out a puzzle like that. Good for her. Back to Sarah again for a minute. We think about what we're shown in the edit, and we wonder if we can rely on our reactions to some of the footage. Well, in one scene, another scene, Sarah is talking about how confident she is about how in control she is. And you just know as you're watching it that, oh boy, that confidence, that way in which she's telling viewers how sure she is of her position in the game, is setting us up for her being undermined. It's one of those things that you can be pretty confident about with respect to editing. When people get cocky, there's nothing the editors love more than to show that cockiness before it's undermined. With a scene very shortly thereafter of how that person was so wrong.
Probst talking about a cultural shift makes me puke.
Sarah's confidence in that scene, and then is coupled with her certainty in telling Tony that Natalie doesn't have an immunity idol, and we move into that tribal council, and Sarah's face when Natalie plays her immunity idol is priceless, says it all. And Tony, with evidence of how much heart he has in the game, was so trying to help people understand that was a possibility. He wasn't even trying as much to support himself, to save himself, as to prevent Sarah from being voted off, or prevent he and Ben from having to waste their immunity idols. But as soon as Natalie played her immunity idol, we knew Tony had been right. The possibility existed. Not only was it a possibility, it was reality. Natalie had the immunity idol. Tony was going to have to waste his. Ben was going to have to waste his. And Sarah had a real possibility of being ousted at that tribal council. She wasn't, and Denise goes home. And that's the way that panned out. Could it have been Sarah? Should it have been somebody else? I don't know. The idols were played, and the shoulda, coulda, wouldas don't really matter. That's just the way it panned out. But even in the midst of that tribal council, again, Probst is talking about this cultural shift, and how he didn't even know that he was this way and that way, and now he's learned. It's infuriatingly bullcrap. It's just nonsense. Probst doesn't, buy any of that. He doesn't believe it. It's not heartfelt. He doesn't care about the way he's mistreated people over the years. He's not out to repair or to help folks understand that he really didn't intend the behaviors that he's maintained for 20 years. This repentance, it's phony, and it's just a simple, expedient reaction to the way in which Probst himself and the others at CBS screwed up season 39, made it a horrible season, and just so badly abused those participants, and it was 100% all their fault. Probst and CBS. It wasn't the participants who did things wrong. It was the edit and the manipulativeness of what the people behind the scenes were trying to do so as to prevent the show from taking responsibility for the way in which it's treated people all along. Gross. I'm sorry. I know I'm going to get comments from you people about the way I'm too harsh on Probst, etc. You don't see it. You don't have access to the reality of it behind the scenes. Part of my journey in sharing what I believe is true about Survivor and the show, the game that I love, is warts and all kind of thing. And I'm very involved. I'm very, very close and very aware of the human dynamics associated with what has been Survivor from its inception. So I think there are many of you who, whether you buy it fully or not, appreciate my efforts to honestly express what's actually happening behind the scenes. Because I don't think you need to be duped. I think it can be so much better and need not be phony. Just take responsibility when you're a douchebag. And they were and have been and continue to be the epitome of douchebags at times. Just frickin' do something about it. Correct it. Change. Accept that that's who you were and that you were exploiting people without any concern whatsoever for the impact to them and their lives, while lying to their faces about how important the participants are to them. It's really grotesque. You'll hear that word a number of times in this recap. So Denise goes home, tribal council over, and boom, the hunt begins. Good for them. Think about this far into the game, how much energy could possibly be left? The game's exhausting. I can't even express how exhausting, just in every way. Yet you leave that tribal council, you see how few people are left, and you've got to find it. You know there's an idol out there, and let's hunt. Off she goes, Natalie, on the search, on the hunt. And she finds it. I talk about challenges and their impact on the game and how it isn't a necessity to be the challenge winner all the time. In fact, it can be a detriment. But there do come times when it seems as if, without having won a challenge, without having earned immunity somehow in a challenge, etc., your position in the game is tenuous at best. And this is one of them. This sandbags thing, you'd like to think it wasn't something Tony absolutely needed or he would be gone. But I think it may have been. And he wins. His sandbags land, he gets to him on there, and Tony gets the immunity. Those are exciting moments when you're thinking about what could have gone a different way. Something as simple as someone, 1 second or 2 seconds ahead of him landing a second bag. And Tony may have been out of the game. Fun to think about.
Tony orchestrating the spy nest, having Sarah come over to talk. Boy, those two are tight to the end.
Now, that immunity challenge is over. And Tony wants to figure out who's got an idol or what's going on in people's mind. And so he orchestrates this gathering by his spy nest so he can climb up in it and he can listen to the folks that are chatting. And of course, he has Sarah help him. What's funny to me is all that's kind of fun to watch, but unnecessary. There's no reason, if Tony is as connected to Sarah as it certainly appears to all of us, that Sarah couldn't simply tell Tony what she learns. He need not be sitting there dying in his spy nest from the heat, etc., while Sarah is taking her time chatting with the chicks for an hour. I mean, it's crazy. It's pretty funny and it makes good TV, but when you think about whether it's necessary or not, unless Tony doesn't trust Sarah, what was the point? He could have easily gotten from Sarah anything that the girls said to her. So does Tony not trust her, but isn't willing to say that to her and wants it to be kind of on the down low? It's an interesting thought in my head. I think he does trust her. I just think he hadn't thought through the idea that he didn't need to be in that spy nest. There are lots of people I'd like to talk about in this episode. Michelle, though, I don't talk enough about how well she plays. She has been come up with the short stick time after time after time after time in this season. And she rises to the occasion repeatedly in many, many ways that are impressive to me. Her emotional stability, her thought process, the rational way in which she evaluates the circumstances in which she finds herself. It isn't common. Many people break down, many people overreact. Male, female, it doesn't matter. Many folks are lost in the emotions associated with the unpredictability in this game. And Michelle is impressively stable. Impressively. So even when some other player brings to her information or thoughts and that other player doesn't even see the negativity or how it could impact Michelle negatively. Michelle can absorb the information, evaluate it, contemplate the risk to herself, recognize she's in danger, not overreact, and move forward thinking of ways to protect herself if possible. I think it's notable. I think it's really, really good gameplay. We see later that she doesn't get any votes. She does not win. And it doesn't, for me, take away at all from the way in which she played such an exquisite game from behind so often. Lots for her to be proud of. I wish I could say I were surprised by Ben's quitting. Oh, people will not like my using that term because, again, there's that heartfelt warmth, that sincerity, that genuineness in his emotional desire to support Sarah's bid to win. But when Sarah and Ben are talking and Ben is tearfully attempting to help Sarah understand that it's okay if she votes him off, and it's okay if she uses that as a power move to support her win, and that he's ready and that he's fine with that. I think it's sincere. I don't think it's something concocted just for attention. However, I do think it is sadly poor gameplay. I think there came a point when it's just too much for Ben. Much of the time this season, I perceived him as overwhelmed and his choices as really, really poor within the context of the game. But this is kind of taking it to a new level. The willingness to leave when you're so close to the end and there are major big moves that you could make that would not result in your being hated and would not result in undermining friendships that are real, but would result in respect and appreciation from viewers who were really looking to see the players play intently and intensely. So to see Ben kind of, maybe a little bit of sadness, etc. I mean, there was real emotion, but so willing to give up his game for someone else is just something, from my perspective, better used in your community to help someone who's really in need. It isn't a Sarah who's in need of emotional support by you giving up your game that I can wholeheartedly feel respect for. I want you to play hard. I wanted you to play harder. I wanted her to play hard. And sure, are there times during which some emotional support could be helpful and not at your own expense? Those are the times I would appreciate seeing you do what you could to uplift another player, but not at your own expense and not at the expense of your opportunity to win the game. So that was a rough one for me. It just was a grinding kind of a halt to the, oh, geesh, can this game be played more poorly? It wasn't pretty for me. It just wasn't pretty. It wasn't a move I respect. I understand the emotions behind it. I understand how Ben can be perceived as a good person. I don't take that away from anybody. But somebody who exploits every opportunity in the game in whatever ways are necessary can be just as good a person. Someone deserving of support and the respect of their efforts to play this game well. And I will continue to try and help viewers understand that. When Ben quits, basically, he does so for Sarah, to support Sarah's game. What a fascinating choice. And you kind of respect the care and love they have for one another. It's just misplaced in the context of a game in which you're supposed to be balls to the wall, playing the win, playing for the win. But here Ben provides that opportunity, and then we watch Sarah cry and wrestle with whether or not she should exploit that opportunity. Oh boy, the levels and and the realness of her confusion about how she should move forward is indicative to me of someone who has not quite yet grasped the pride she should have associated with getting through as best she's able, in whatever ways she's able. So, as harsh as this seems, if that's an opportunity, I think Sarah should consider it. I think she should exploit it. I don't think she should exploit that opportunity at the expense of a better one. So if she has an opportunity to talk him back into the game, for example, and take out Tony, why didn't she do that? That's a power move. That's somebody who's there, who's focused, who isn't lost in their emotions and undermined or overwhelmed with the depletion of nutrition, etc., and tired and exhausted. Someone who's still playing would think about ways to exploit the opportunities as they arise, but not just jump at the first one that seems available. Let's see if that could be parlayed even into a more powerful one. Let's see what else I could do that's even better and save that for the next time I need something. So the level of gameplay slipped in here is what I'm saying. And I wanted the players in this season to be more fine-tuned, more direct, more driven to play well. There were many who were, but upping the ante for me would have made the show even better and would have been representative of winners who are playing well. And there are lots of winners who can play well. And I don't think some of the choices for the season, I know people will say that's self-serving or whatever, but it's not for me about who would replace who or whatever. For me, it's about, were the people choosing the participants for Winners at War sufficiently competent to understand the level of gameplay any particular winner was capable of? That's what would make the best Winners at War season, I think. So we come to another tribal council, and Jeff's talking about another breakthrough. Oh, for crying out loud, it could make me puke. Drives me nuts. But even worse, I want to point out something that Sarah, in her heartfelt comments, was expressing that I think is seriously misguided. One of the things that Sarah said is how she referenced how the game will bring out the best of her and the worst of her. And I think you're really off the mark when you start to talk in those terms. I think Sarah talking about how fans reacted to her previous win and how some of the things that she did in order to accomplish that win were part of the worst of her. Way off the mark. I think it's wrong. I think it's inaccurate. I don't think it's even meaningful to categorize the moves you make in a game of Survivor consistent with the rules that are successfully moving you toward the end, that actually resulted in your winning, would be categorized that way as part of the worst of you, or things that you might have done that weren't so helpful necessarily, but were emotional or were the best of you. This is wrong-minded. This is so distorted, dangerously so, and takes away from the game. I believe, Sarah and I have connected, and I will talk with her more about this, but I'm so driven to help Sarah understand that it is those choices she made that were necessary within the context of the game to support her win that are the best of her. They're evidence of her awareness. They're evidence of her capacity to understand what it takes to separate what you might do in real life from what you need to do in the game. And to still be willing to do it. And to, I don't know, I want somehow to help her feel pride in that. To not wallow in ignorant morons' comments that don't understand the game. And to even smile that there are people so detached from what the game really is that they aren't capable of supporting you, that they aren't capable of even recognizing what you've done well. I'm not an airhead. I'm not detached somehow from who I am. I'm certainly not someone who is unself-aware. And I know I'll get comments that all of this angst that you're hearing from me about the way these comments aren't part of the game and are me somehow trying to talk myself into believing that I'm a good person because these are the moves I've made. Wrong. I already know I'm a good person. This has been resolved for me decades ago. Long ago, I recognized that others, the outside world, viewers, will lag in their understanding of the game so significantly that they never will understand me, never mind fully. So it isn't even something for which I long anymore. It was something in which I was originally disappointed. But my commentary for Winners at War and talking about it now are not driven by my need for any kind of accolades or any kind of interest from people at all. They're driven by my awareness of what's real, of what's honest about the game of Survivor, and about how viewers now can get more out of the game, can understand the participants better, if they start to think a little bit, if they aren't lemmings driven by the kind of media manipulation so powerful behind the scenes in Survivor. And sadly, the ways in which Probst has bought into trying to kind of pull the wool over viewers' eyes, rather than dig into what it means to be a good player and to love the game of Survivor. Support it, play it, and have it evolve in a positive way. That's my belief as to what it is I'm doing when I feel so strongly about trying to help people understand what's really going on in the game. Bye, Ben. What else can I say? You know, you were willing. It's sacrificial lamb, whatever you want to call it. Bye, Ben. So as we listen to the lead up to the final immunity challenge, that ball falling thing where you had to catch the balls out of the two diverted ways, again, we have this prelude. We have this prefacing of what is to come as we are told that for so many seasons, the person who wins this challenge wins the show. So almost automatically we know whoever wins this challenge isn't going to win the show. It's just for me, it's just an unnecessary effort on the editor's part to kind of be distracting or to put people off when it does the opposite. I don't think those comments were necessary. But we watched the challenge and on it goes, and, Tony doesn't win. The balls drop and boom, Natalie wins. Was she excited? Were you excited for her? Wow. It was exciting to watch Natalie win. But what took away from that win for me was the prefacing, those comments suggesting that the person who wins this always wins the show. I knew when they'd made that, and then I see Natalie win, I was like, oh, so she's not going to win. Interesting. I didn't think she was going to, because I didn't think the jury would reward the Edge of Extinction time. But still, I would rather have not had those comments confirming so far in advance my perception that Natalie wasn't going to win. We get to the final, and, Natalie, having won that immunity, now decides everything. Natalie decides who comes to the finale with her. She decides which two go to the fire-making competition against one another. Completely in Natalie's hands, and she thinks it through, and we see that she selects Sarah and Tony to be pit against one another to make fire. And I like her reasoning. She's breaking up the alliance finally, period. So one of them is not going to be in the final. I think it may have been an error for her not to have taken Tony out and tried to best him face to face in fire making. I think that's what enabled the last person from Edge of Extinction to win. And with Natalie's resume added to her having taken a risk like that and won, I think she would have prevailed if she'd done that. But she didn't. Tony and Sarah go head to head. And I want to talk about the emotion. Tony wins the fire-making challenge. And Tony played such an amazing game that I don't think there are too many people who are thinking he's not going to win at that point, now that he's definitely in the final three. It's Natalie, Tony, and Michelle, and I think Tony, by most people's gauge, earned the win, deserves the win, and would be given the win by that jury. But the emotion there, I hope you saw it, and I hope you understand the inability to control, no matter how masterfully you've played the game, emotions of that strength. So Sarah, her opportunity for the win is gone. Her love for Tony is evident. The end of it all, the release of the stress, combined with Tony's same thing, release of the stress. It's done now. All we have to do is argue or communicate our rationale and our reasons that we believe we're deserving of the win. But in that moment, that release and that hug and that feeling of support from Sarah for Tony, it was real and it's powerful, and I'm sure viewers connect to that. And those are the kinds of emotions, the uncontrollable, reasonably connected to what's going on without negatively impacting one's game, that are consistent with the great show, the great game of Survivor, that I think are good for viewers to experience and to view as we move through the game. When they're relied on for us to be bonded to the show, to connect to it, to want to come see more, help the viewership, help the fans of Survivor the Game stay connected, stay involved. And I hope people appreciate them for what they are, for the intensity, the realness, for the ways in which they cannot be controlled. You can't maintain. They're just Tony doesn't want to sit on national television crying, but there's just no thought of it. The release, the amazing kind of full body pride, really, for having gotten to where he needed to get and to be able now to let it go for a moment. There's nothing else like it, and we're lucky to be exposed to that. It's great that the camera folk really do capture some of that realness and that it's integrated into the show. I love it. It's a part of the Survivor journey. Maybe for the first time in 40 seasons, I not just appreciated each of the finalists' speeches, but I thought that they were legitimately well thought out. I thought that they were real. I thought that they were sufficiently confident I thought that the people involved made the best choices, made the best argument for themselves that could be made. I loved that each of them took responsibility for the choices they made. I loved that they were engaged with the jury sincerely, without phony kind of apologies and without phoniness at all, really. I mean, and there's a lot of that I've seen over the years in the finales, where people are thinking they have to be a particular way or another, and they're pretending. It's awful, and it's obvious to me. I'm not sure to how many others, but it really detracts from my willingness to give someone a win when they, screw it up royally at the end. And I really loved each of them, Michelle's, Natalie's, and Tony's answers and commentary were fulfilling. They played hard, they played well, they felt pride in their efforts, and they were comfortable expressing why they deserved the win. I loved it. I loved it. I hope you enjoyed the season. I wish I had been there. Sorry I wasn't, but I certainly enjoyed watching it. What a journey. Season 40, Winners at War. I, as you, if any of you are listening to these videos, realize have had a tough time not having been brought to participate in this season. I thought it was an inevitability. I'm proud of the ways in which I've played Survivor. I love the game, and I am very, very disappointed in the people who decided not to include me for season 40. I'd like to think it's not just ego. I'd like to think it's about the game, the lifespan of Survivor itself, and that the original innovator should have been a part of this season. I think it would have raised the level of gameplay. I think it would have been the cap on these 40 seasons that the show deserved. And I'm sad that what I think of as bullies were involved and exploited their power in a way that undermined what the fans eventually got. That said, a wonderful guy, Dante Luna, a fan of the show, just couldn't stand that I didn't have a voice of my own. And so he initiated this whole thing, created the YouTube channel, and boom, here we are, recapping each of the episodes, talking about some of what I believe to be true with respect to the game and behind the scenes, and other topics that I consider meaningful to me and in life, and I hope others appreciate that I'm sharing. It's been a fun ride. We're in conversations about what might be the next steps. Certainly people have expressed interest in our going over season 1, and so that may be coming soon. I've never done that yet. Kind of moved through the entire season in a way that you fans will appreciate, I think, some of the moves that were made that early. But I'll continue to share other stories, some meaningful concepts that come to mind. We're exploring other options. We may build an online store. Certainly open to investors or sponsors. Just reach out. We can do all kinds of things. It's one of these situations in which there is a world of opportunity, and I look forward to exploring whatever it is that makes sense from this point forward. So continue, please, with your comments, questions, etc., and we'll continue this dialogue. Have a great day. 80% of you who are listening to these videos have not subscribed to my channel. Please subscribe. Just hit the subscription button and hit the notification button, and you'll be informed when I have another video up for you to listen to. After you've subscribed, comment. Comment positively, comment negatively. No holds barred. Just say what you're thinking. That's what will make our exchange even more valuable. As I'm able, I'll create new videos responsive to that commentary. So like away, or dislike, on that rare occasion you may feel the need to do so. But either way, thank you.